pop in somewhere around there.
And not to mention that we also have religious leaders that
Right.
have
So I'm officially
been,
good to go. So whenever you want to start money, you can go.
accused of, and many times.
So just start with a slate. So
Or
you
the
just
offenders.
ask.
So that's a
Yeah.
whole.
And you mean like
Can
locally?
say your name,
Locally,
big one,
and
we
also
can sync it
people
up.
that come from India
Sure.
that are religious leaders,
Hmm.
and
Uncle Jim.
those are all.
Yes.
Why
We
go
have someone we are
And go for it.
potentially interviewing from
My name's
Montreal.
Baltej Singh Dillon.
Who
I'm an
was,
RCMP officer and
administration-
inspector with the RCMP.
The age of, I think around like
Take one.
5, 6
Perfect.
to like early teens by her for G. And
Uncle G, can you,
long story
expand
short,
a little bit more
that
on your sort of profession?
initially it was, Galti Hoagie,
I guess a little bit.
you know, she was younger, in her later teens, and
Sure.
they invited
Um,
to come from
now I've been with the
Woodland,
RCMP now
Galti
for
Hoagie. They ended up giving
approximately
her a
27 and a
total
half
of
years.
$25,000 in
And
installments.
in
A
that
few
time
years
period,
later, I think she was
I've had
dating someone
a
at the
variety of
time, and
roles,
he encouraged
a variety
her
of
to,
responsibilities,
let's, press
including
charges. And
investigations,
when they did
major
that,
investigations.
the legal team on the other
been
side, of course,
involved
used those
in,
installments as, proof of,
interviewing
hey, you're looking
various
for a payday.
yeah,
You're looking
witnesses
for
and victims,
some money,
including
and the
suspects
story that
on a
she
variety
had
of different
is, he
types
did like
of
bungra out of
sort
the
of criminal
courtroom,
offences
and
and
currently
issues.
is
At present, I'm
I'm not sure
in
that
charge of operational readiness and
hierarchy
response.
is somewhere
The officer in
placed
charge
one of the
of
court
emergency
in
preparedness
Brampton.
for the RCMP in British Columbia.
And
And
it's
all that really
and
means is
literally
that
right now,
for all
or I think it was
natural
in March when the
disasters,
trial got pushed.
human-caused
is-
disasters or
Slate 2.
national security
Yeah.
events or large events,
What are we
I would
10?
Let's do
have the
10.
responsibility of coordinating.
Take 10.
The response.
Usually we write it down.
Or
This is a bit more
mobilizing the
loose.
resources
Yeah.
It's
to
cozy.
And
bring some support to that particular.
at the time of her trial, his
so,
kids were
example,
put on the
that
stand,
would
and my
be-
dad's a
would have
great
been
guy,
fires
yada yada yada.
last year,
And now in
where I
March,
would have helped
his
in
daughter
mobilizing
to court.
the
And,
required
that went
resources
I think
to
it got
provide
pushed
support to
to a different
communities
date as it does
in northern
often here.
British Columbia
And
that
so yeah, the
had
daughter stepped up to
ultimately been
and as soon as that
had
happens,
faced
and, there's
some
multiple
difficult
victims
times due to the
now.
wildfires.
Her case opens up too, right? So
I gotta
So
tell
in
you,
your time,
somebody did that to my daughter.
Working in the Lower
You know.
Mainland, and
You
has
won't
it been
find it.
specifically the Lower Mainland only, or?
No, I started
So-
working in Quesnel back
The father doesn't
in
understand.
1990.
Father cannot.
and
This is father was
91
using his own dog.
is when I started
So, I don't know
in the community of Quesnel. That was my first posting. I was there for 4.5
what
years.
more to say to that.
Most of the time, most of my time there was in general duty.
I've dealt with cases like that.
And investigated everything
The father
from
who is supposed to be the protector
drunk on the side of the road
is
to
abusing his
very
daughter,
serious
his child.
investigations involving
What do you
assaults,
say to that? It's
attempted murders.
yeah. I don't know what to say to
um,
that. I think the larger
Well,
issue here is that we as a community,
sexual-
we as
sexual
a,
investigations, sexual assault
um,
investigations.
as
And after that, I came
people
to the
within
Lower
this
Mainland,
country,
where I was then
and leaders.
brought into
I
the
think this
area
falls on
task
leaders.
force.
So if I'm sitting
where I
with
worked
you
for
here,
7
yeah, I
years.
certainly see myself as a leader in the
That
community.
speaks
I
for
need
itself.
to lend my voice to this
This
very
was the disaster
important,
from 1984.
project and important
Occurred in June
documentary.
2nd. It claimed
leaders
the
need
voice
to
of
speak up.
criminal
I need to let people know that
innocence,
I won't stand for that. I'm not going to
both
stand
on
for that.
the,
And I will
Air India
help whoever is
plane and
interested
then also
in getting
two
that
baggage
help.
handlers
And I will
in
stand with
Narita
anyone
Airport in Japan.
that speaks out.
After that, I
and I'm not going
was,
to, in any way, shape, or form,
seconded to
bend
the
to anyone's
victim
desire
investigation,
to try to
where I
find a middle ground. There's no
approximately a
middle
year
ground. I'm
helping
sorry.
with
When
building
that
that
happens,
case against
let's be clear on what we have to do. Let's not support the abusers. Let's not
multiple,
do a
homicides,
GoFundMe for that
murders,
person. Let's
of,
stand with those that have been
women in the
victimized. Let's
Lower
give them a voice. Let's lend our courage to them.
And after that, I went into
their courage has been taken away.
the
Their strength
polygraph
has been
section.
taken away.
And
They're
that was
weak.
part of the interview
They've
team.
been offended against.
There was in the
We need
polygraph
to
section.
rebuild
I
their strength and courage and
basically was
confidence,
involved in
and so that they can carry on in
all
life and
investigations.
achieve all that they were meant to achieve.
where I would conduct
Instead of
interviews,
stunting their growth, instead of
polygraph tests,
interfering with their
assist
potential, instead of
investigations
leaving them with these
guiding,
scars and pain and grief
some of their
that
thinking
is going to haunt them for
around
the rest of their
conducting
lives.
interviews and
And
interrogations.
But that's, you know, isn't it incredible that we do
And,
that?
after the polygraph,
Incident that you
assignments
shared. I mean,
and,
it's happening in
and
most
then
houses,
went to-
and
at that
as
time
I've
it
said
was called the
before,
Gang Task Force,
we create these
where I worked
that
and
maybe
I
are
can-
landscape.
I can grab it.
some youth strategies for some of our youth that are involved, that fall prey to a criminal lifestyle.
Hi.
Hey, Laura.
Came into the criminal
How are ya?
investigation.
Good.
Um,
I am going to be
largely
about
concerned
10
with,
minutes.
Oh,
large.
okay, no worries.
If you don't mind.
I'm
Saroj, I think, is just going to be on her
Organized
way back. I don't know if she took off somewhere, but she's going to be on her way back.
Supporting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You didn't know I was a
large
superstar.
operations.
No, I'm a guard superstar.
Yeah, she's got a superstar.
And,
Yeah,
it was
we might need a guard
I'll just
superstar.
responsible
spray out what I
for
think.
Awesome.
And then
developing.
Yeah,
when
we're
you're
just
ready.
about. Yeah, we're just
Okay,
about
Yeah,
wrapping
we're
up.
like, we have 5 minutes left on this. so
Yeah.
that's done.
Thank you, Laura.
Awesome.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank
Which
you.
I did, and I
Great lady.
became the
Nice.
person, police officer in charge
So,
of that
you know,
intelligence center.
I
where
mean, we
worked
have this facade.
for a number of
Unfortunately, we have
years,
this facade.
and then went on to
And
federal
we have these beautiful homes
organized
in our
crime,
communities,
serious
and we
organized
continue
crime,
to
section,
celebrate
again,
the fact that, that we've got these
developing their
beautiful
intelligence
homes. And,
structure,
you know, those families
supporting
are
federal
like
serious
those,
organized crime
those homes
with
where we close some doors
intelligence
and we
mandate,
don't let people into those rooms.
supporting
And we just keep people in the
large,
living room. No, don't go there. There's nothing to see
organized
there.
crime
You know,
investigations.
there's not, but look,
from the
stay here.
intelligence perspective.
Everything's fine here. This is where we
And
stay.
it
So we
was after that
put everything
that
on
I,
ignore. We try to
then
hide it away. We
was,
close those doors.
given
We lock them. But I gotta tell you,
of moving
that
into
darkness is
operations
going to come out.
in response.
That is
Where
going
I'm
to
in.
come out. That evil
Very, like,
is going to come and consume us.
Yes.
If not that day,
I
a
feel
little
like
later.
maybe
If not us, our
majority
next
of the
generation.
spectrum of
If not,
your profession, you've had the opportunity
immediately
to,
in time.
um,
And the
you know,
price is too high to pay
contribute and lead.
for our children to continue to live in that pain and grief.
And
It's
I guess
too high
from our
to continue to
original
keep those doors
conversation that
closed.
we had on the
So
phone,
we need to do a bit of cleaning in our
you know,
homes.
so
We need
wanted
to step up.
explore
We need to own our
our
responsibilities.
community locally.
We need to be
and
the
you know,
titles that we've been
something
given.
that we talked
We need to
about
be
was
the fathers and the
fact
mothers that our children
our
expect us to be.
community and the
I told
people
my daughters many, many years
you know,
ago,
of
if somebody
generations,
hurts you,
whether first, second, or
I will
third,
protect you,
really came
and
here,
with
with
you will never be hurt
nothing
again.
and really created
And so
themselves
that's a
and their
promise that a
families
father
and the
makes his
foundation that
daughters.
we all thrive on
That's a
today
promise
from the
that
ground up.
we make our children.
And you know, there's
And
so
the-
much good
And our children expect that from us.
we as a community
So,
have, but there's also bits
So we
and
need to
pieces
step
of it
up
that,
and
you know, certainly
and within our
can
community, our
acknowledge,
community leaders,
address, and, you
I
know,
think
start
have
this
a lot to
dialogue
do
on.
and
which, you know,
have a
today
commitment to
is going
this.
to be,
I know there's a lot of other issues
sexual
and a lot of other
abuse
things that we need to.
you know, our
figure
own
out as well.
families
But
and how
This is
that
an important one.
is
This is
addressed.
and
so
critical.
I guess
This
more
is,
broadly, if we can just
leaves
start
a lot
with
of,
your thoughts
Sure.
on that.
souls.
Sure, the Indo-Canadian community in
harmed
Canada,
in
specifically in British
and
Columbia,
grief,
have established
without any reprieve,
itself
without any
as
support,
a,
without any recovery.
a community that
As long
is
as
hardworking,
we continue
diligent,
to keep those
contributing
secrets
to
in
the
those
country's
locked
economy,
rooms, and
despite its
make an
small
attempt
numbers.
to shed some light, and bring some light.
A force to reckon with when it comes to,
Nice.
you know,
I will
being
circle that.
involved
Yeah.
in the political scene, as
Good?
we see many of our
Good.
leaders
Do you need anything
and
else? Feel good?
our
Yeah.
community members becoming involved in the political life and taking some very key roles in defining Canada and defining Canada's role on the international stage. We have done extremely well for people that come to Canada under disadvantaged system that had entrenched in it biases and discriminatory practices, which I think only lent itself to making us stronger and bigger and better, where we took on jobs and roles and responsibilities that maybe others would not have. Established ourselves as good citizens and people that were interested in not only just making a good living for ourselves, but interested in making Canada a better place for all. So I don't think there's any denying that the Indo-Canadian community is a very strong, vibrant, a very important element of what makes why Canada is successful. I think we should take a lot of pride in all that we've accomplished, all that we are going to accomplish, and all that we continue to do. That does not take away, that doesn't get minimized, or that doesn't get eroded, or that doesn't get forgotten when we also begin to shine some light on dark corners in our community, because they do exist. So when we speak about a variety of different things, whether that's some overrepresentation of Indo-Canadian youth in some of the gang issues and the prevalence of gangs, whether that's in the Lower Mainland or across British Columbia, or whether we speak about sexual abuse within Indo-Canadian families. I certainly want to make sure that as we speak about these issues, we come at this from a place of trying to create awareness, bring light into this area, open some discussions, potentially even help give somebody a voice to be able to speak out. But in no way, shape, or form is this discussion in any way, minimizing or intended to lessen the contributions that have been made by the majority of the Indo-Canadian community. And I think it takes courage, and I think it takes a lot of strength and fortitude for a community to be able to speak about areas that requires attention, that requires some compassion, that requires some open dialogue around. So I certainly feel that we've matured enough, and we have a strong, solid foundation that we can have those conversations. Sexual abuse is real. I have certainly come across it in my tenure as a police officer and as a professional. Sexual abuse is real in every community. Sexual abuse is a painful disease. It's a painful chapter in anyone's life, and I wouldn't wish it on anybody. Sexual abuse is also something that's transferred, a victim makes the next perpetrator, who creates the next victim, who becomes the next perpetrator. So that cycle also, we know that, and I know this from my work, and I know this from having sat with experts, and I know this from having interviewed, both perpetrators and victims who are both, as much as they've perpetrated on somebody else, they themselves have suffered that same abuse from someone else in their home and in their family. And to break that cycle requires, honesty. It requires courage. It requires a system and support to help those that have found themselves in that cycle to break out of that cycle. And I don't know if we've got that. I don't know if we are able to do that. I don't know if we've within the community itself that we have done enough to give those victims a voice. And I don't know if we have, as a community, you know, created, developed, put forth, provided safe spaces for where we can have these conversations. The center of our community, the heart center of our community is a gurdwara, is a temple, and for many it's a community center as well. But I would challenge anyone to demonstrate to me and others where we, for the majority of our gurdwaras, where we have established counselors, established, you know, helplines, established processes, or aid for anyone that may be suffering from that. So what we're left with is mainstream, you know, services, which are fine if you're mainstream. Not so good when you are not mainstream. And again, the government of this country, those that are in those roles, our social services, our emergency services, all are doing, you know, what they can to support our law enforcement. But, you know, when it comes to those services, when it comes to those agencies, by that time it's usually already a very horrific event. The abuse has gone on for years. It's turned, you know, it's because of a very exigent circumstance that they've had to reach out to someone they normally would not. Most often, the conversations, in my experience, and I certainly can be corrected by any other expert in the field, but this is my experience. Most often, those conversations occur secretively, in whispers, and you know, are cries for help, but they die at the vine, if you will, because we don't have the extended support where someone can go to the local gurdwara and say, can I speak with a counselor? Can I speak with a professional? Can I speak with someone that can help guide this friend of mine, this family that I know of, this person who's come to me and said, this is what's happening to me. I don't want you to tell anybody, but this is what's happening to me. And so that's where I've seen some families get stuck. And I've also seen historical sexual abuse. So where children now have become adults, and looking back, they realized that they were abused, and that they were, you know, the things that happened to them were not right, were wrong, and they've been impacted by it. And so they reach out and they start to speak about it. And if they are professionals, they might have a voice and they might be able to speak about it. But what ultimately hampers it is, one, so much time has passed, so it's difficult to gather evidence, which then sets in this defeatist sort of, you know, emotional position. Well, why bother then? All this is going to do is just ultimately open up all of that pain and create all kinds of, you know, challenge within the family, and what really is the benefit at the end. So those kinds of conversations happen, and I've had those conversations, and they're not easy to have. So in a very, you know, sort of summarical way, that is what I've seen so far.
Yeah, that was.
Okay.
Are we okay?
So re-roll. Yeah, it's still going.
Okay.
We can do take 2.
Do you just mind saying take 2 and doing a quick clap?
No, take 2.
Perfect.
That was all very well said. I just wanted to elaborate on one point, well, a few, but one of them was, you feel like, you know, we're just not there yet and people aren't speaking. What do you feel like that true hindrance is, whether it's the people and the family?
Oh, sorry. What's up?
Can I just get one of you to move your vehicle? I just need to get my truck out.
Oh,
Yeah.
Thank you.
I can go.
You
Sure.
you can just park it behind the other vehicle.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, we should have done that at the start.
Yeah, that's our fault. Should we slate it?
Yes. So let's call it take 3.
Yeah.
Okay, take 3.
Perfect.
And to add to what you said, what do you feel like, that reason is, like, why we aren't there? And, there is a lot of silence on this, and, there's obviously the stigma and the pressures of the family and the victims and the abuser. Are you able to sort of elaborate more on your thoughts on that as to, like, what is the reason? Like, we're not talking
Sure.
about this, and what are we scared of?
Sure. I think there's a variety of reasons. I don't think there is one thing. I think not talking about it makes it go away. Not talking about it makes us all feel that we live in a perfect family. Not talking about it gives us a sense of everything's okay. So I think there's a lot of reasons why not talking about it is easy. It's a comfortable place. It's cozy. As long as we don't pay attention or we don't turn our minds to it. But I don't know if we even have the skill or the capacity or the know-how to start talking about it. Because that takes a little bit of courage, and that takes a lot of compassion. It takes a lot of understanding of the issue, and it takes strong leaders to be able to lead that conversation. So, and I would just say this: can you imagine that a Gurdwara puts out a call to the community that come on Sunday at 1 o'clock. We're going to talk about sexual abuse. Like, just saying it out loud, we are already feeling tension and pressure around it. So, and that's us. That's us who are progressive. That's us who deal with this on a daily basis. Well, where does that come from? If we kind of, start to go back to and, sort of reverse engineer, where's that fear come? It's, for me, certainly it comes from this, we belong, as much as we like to think, to a very conservative culture. Maybe ultra-conservative. And not to say that there are not other conservative cultures, there are. And I suspect they're suffering the same issues that we are. So we come from a very ultra-conservative culture. We are not, when we talk about our homeland and Punjab, to some extent we repress the discussions around sexuality. We don't talk about it openly, and it's not something that is in any way, shape, or form part of our sort of growing up. So all those things contribute. It just becomes a taboo conversation. And I think even having the conversation begins to label you, begins to, sort of brand you in a certain way, which is negative. So all of those things interfere and create significant blocks to actually beginning to sit and having open and honest conversations around not just sexual abuse, domestic violence for that matter, honor killings and honor-based decision making, with our children who, now are having, marriages outside of the the community, and so all those things are coming to the forefront. So interracial marriages is also something that we're just starting to become having some comfort around, to say, oh, okay, well, they're human beings too, just because they're not the same mocha color as we are, I think we'll be all right. So we're just starting to have that sort of comfort and coziness around. Okay, I think this is good. So I wish we could accelerate that process, because the more we integrate into the mainstream, and I'm certainly not going to say we have it all right, and I certainly won't say the mainstream has it all right. I think there's lots that we can learn from each other and the cultures that we bring together, and that is the strength of interracial marriages, of mixing cultures or bringing cultures together, is to develop each other's strengths, find because these conversations do occur in the mainstream. In the mainstream, there are counseling services. In the mainstream, there are conversations that occur around sexual abuse, and there are conversations around equality and how we treat our women and our daughters and our mothers and our sisters and our wives. And so those all contribute, in my humble opinion and in my experience, all contribute to why the cloak and the veil and this shroud that we've got on this topic is not being removed, or no one's reaching for it. We just walk by it every day and say, oh, that's okay, it's covered, it's all good. Let's not look underneath there, because then we got to do something about it. Then we might have to follow up, because I would challenge any Gurdwara committee to have that. Let's just put that out. Let's put a poster up this Sunday after Gurdwara, after the Akhand Path. We're gonna bring some experts, and we're gonna talk about sexual abuse in our homes. Like I tell you, I'd be hard pressed to find someone with that kind of courage today.
I guess in your experience, dealing with families and victims and abusers, individually or collectively, I guess what do you find as common reactions when a daughter or a son or a wife or a husband, someone is bringing something to the forefront? What do you find as the common response?
Denial. Not happening here. This is a mistake. There's confusion. That's not what happened. That's not what was intended. They have misunderstood what the other person was doing. They're wrong. The victim is victimized. The victim is shunned. The victim is not supported. And I'm generalizing, I understand that. There are some families who have been very brave, who have been courageous in supporting their sons and daughters, who came forward and said, last night I was in my room. I was asleep. And then Uncle G came into my room. And, he did this. Well, for a child to say that is already a step forward. That's influence from mainstream Canada. Because here we teach our children bad touch, good touch. We teach our children to speak up. When that happens, as parents, as guardians, as protectors of our youth, we have a responsibility. Those are probably, and I will accept and suffer the consequences of my very layperson language here, and only share it in this way that I'm using this language, not to minimize it, but simply to profess its, how it sits. Those are probably the easy cases. There's no easy thing about it, but those are the easy cases where we point a finger at a stranger who's visiting, who's overnighting, who's not related to our family, who's not connected to us in any way. Easy. Those are the better ones. Those are the more simpler ones to deal with. It's when it's the uncle. It's when it's the grandfather. It's when it's the brother. It's when it's someone immediate. Then it's Loki Karnage. Takana we have to cover this. What are other people going to think of us? Because we tie our reputation to each other. And the honor of the family is tied to each other in that family. So to point someone out, we also must accept some responsibility for what we perceive as failure, for not, guiding, for not teaching, for not instructing, for not giving good parenting, whatever that is. Right? And so there's an increased, those are difficult, those are incredibly complex. And for a mother, or for a sister, for a grandmother, for an aunt to come forward to go against a patriarch of the house, man, those are mountains to overcome. Those are oceans to cross. Those are just, in some instances, suicidal. From a reputational perspective, and also potentially, relationship ending, a marriage ending, breaking families apart. Right? So to have that kind of cleansing, it's just incredibly complex. And I would share that are also experiences that are shared in the mainstream, but I think that much more amplified in cultures like ours that have very strong extended family system, that are so entrenched in our, commitment to our relatives and our extended family. So it's amplified, that complexity, that difficulty, that challenge. In no way, shape, or form would I say that this is easier for a mainstream family to bring forward when it's but I've been there where, a father is pointed out to be an abuser by a daughter, who I had a personal, this was an investigation that I took on. And the mother in that family said, we need to make sure this is sorted out. Let's call the police. I'm not abandoning you as a husband, but I'm not also abandoning my daughter who just pointed a finger at you. So I want this to be put to bed. Either she's wrong or you're wrong. I don't know. So I'm calling the police because I want to protect you both. And that's a different kind of thinking than maybe what we would go through, maybe what an Indo-Canadian family would go through, who may not be thinking in that clear terms like this mother did. And so I saw that many times over. And again, these are anecdotals. These are not, I have not done any type of research. This is my experience. This is my lifelong experience in the community, and as a police officer, and as well as a community leader, from what I've seen. And I've seen it in the Punjabi community where, the Indo-Canadian community, where a young man came to me and shared that he remembers being abused by his uncle, who lived with them, his chachaji, in that home. And after many days of speaking with him, encouraging him to bring this forward, as I shared with him the cycle of abuse and potentially other children that may have been suffered the same things that he doesn't know anything about. After a lot of work and a lot of conversation, where it landed was, and this was an educated man. This was someone that grew up in Canada. He couldn't do it. Could not follow through with that complaint. Did not want to. And when I said that I have to report it, he said, you can report it, but I'm going to deny any of it and all of it. And so all I could do was provide him with some counseling, provide him with some help, to help him deal with some of the demons that he was living with to this day. So those are two stark contrasts, around two different families. Again, I caveat it all by these are anecdotal experiences. This is not research, but I think there would probably be a lot of support for those two experiences being reflective of the larger community as well.
I guess to jump back to one of the comments you made earlier is the, historical abuse and historical trauma or current trauma that comes from historical events. Do you want to check?
Yeah, we'll do another roll for this one.
Okay.
I'm just gonna. Perfect. Alrighty. So is that one rolling?
Yeah, we are
It
recording.
says record. Okay, perfect.
Can we Slate take one?
Yeah.
So take 4.
Slate, take 4.
Perfect. It's like a movie.
I know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so to hop back to something you said earlier about the historical trauma and what and I guess what we hear people say and other people, I guess, around them say is like, it was a long time ago, or it was 20 years ago, or 30 years ago, or 10 years ago. I guess, like, what, in your, I guess, professional opinion as well, for whomever may see this, like, what can those people do? Because I think they feel like their hands are tied, or that they are in a way restricted because it wasn't immediate, or it wasn't only 24 hours ago. And I guess for all the people that are wondering, I guess legally speaking, is there a statute of limitations? And, what can people sort of look to should they want to pursue something?
Yeah. No, I mean, there's no statute of limitations. We can investigate historical sexual abuse. So the advice is, go speak to somebody, because whether you know it or not, you're carrying a lot of pain with you. Whether you feel it or not, you're carrying a lot of scars. And what you don't want to do is, because of that pain, because of those scars, because of that victimization, have that manifest itself in some way, shape, or form through you that ultimately harms someone you love. Because it interferes with your trust building when you've been abused. It interferes with your confidence when you've abused. It interferes with your outlook in life itself. It interferes with how you perceive some of the relationships that you're in. And some behaviors that are not okay may feel normal and may be normalized for you because of what you've been through. So it's critical that anyone that has gone through that, seek help. Sit with somebody and have a conversation, just so that you begin to understand that you have a voice and you can share, and there are safe places and spaces that can happen. There's a lot of non-governmental organizations in the community that have very good counselors and support that will listen to you and can guide you as well. Reach out, absolutely reach out, because it's like everything else, is that if it's not treated, if it's not heard, if it's not dealt with, it'll manifest itself somewhere in some shape or form. And certainly that's not the time to begin unpacking, the past, to try to determine why someone is behaving the way they're behaving, or why someone is, reacting the way they are to their circumstance. So there's a lot of value in doing that. And I've come across situations where, folks who have had this behavior normalized for them, or feel that this is love, this is me caring for somebody, this is how I show my sort of concern and care, don't realize themselves that what they're doing is actually abusing. What they're doing is victimizing. What they're doing is simply carrying on that pattern of abuse. That doesn't stop, that doesn't get interfered with or interrupted unless there's a professional and there's support that can unpack and begin to help a person reflect on some of those pieces without concern, without fear, without worry. So there's two parts. One is bringing the abuser to justice and having that closure that way. That may not work all the time. That may not be successful all the time, because it does, in some cases, it is one person's word against the other, unless there are multiple victims, and then the balance shifts. But you don't know if there are multiple victims if the victims don't come forward to begin with. So it's a catch-22 there. And the other part is actually the victim healing, the victim finding support, the victim going down a path of recovery, understanding what happened to them was not their fault, understanding that they were taken advantage of, understanding that this is not normal, understanding that they can lean on others to move them through this dark valley. So really there's two parts to this, and sometimes all that we can do is just the second part, which is bring support and help. And if we can even do that, if we can even have some of that, some of that information come out and shared, I think we'll go a long way in, interfering with the cycles of abuse that are occurring in our community. And I don't want to make it sound like that we have some sort of in any way, shape, or form epidemic, because I don't think so. But conversely, one victim is one victim too many.
Fair enough. I guess. What are...
I'm gonna try to sit up here next.
Sure.
That was just my watch, sorry. Buzzing.
Oh, that's okay.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, I was wondering what that was. I was like, what was that?
Where is it coming from?
Or something.
Three missed
Yeah,
calls.
you're good.
Just doing the moves and stuff. I'm gonna go right around here.
We have recording shift off. Or
Yeah, I should stop that one.
is it C1 again?
Yeah.
Oh, buddy.
They're
Sorry.
like, do
Yeah,
it
get out
on
of
your-
my bag.
Yes. Essentially.
You can roll that one.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, I know we were just there in December and January, Malaysia and in Thailand, so it's great.
That's awesome.
We're still trying to get rid of the belly fat.
No, you're in good shape.
Too much money, too much food.
Too much food.
Yeah,
Pad thai.
yeah, pad thai
Wow.
every day.
Can we
Oh yeah,
take 5?
we're good. Take 5.
I guess what I wanted to get your thoughts on was, I guess, the thoughts on forgiveness and how forgiveness is, like in my opinion, it's it's an evolving thing, and I think that a lot of the survivors I've spoken to, people just, there's the well-intended people around them, like their family and friends are like, oh, just, like they're halfway, they're doing the halfway, let me support you halfway, I don't really want people to know this is in my family. And, there's a lot of like, just forgive and forget and move on and be the bigger person. And sort of like what your thoughts are on forgiveness in general and those well-intended people trying to like push the person down a path.
Well, this is a taboo topic in the community and in our families. So, it's kind of like spoiled food in the fridge, right? We see it, we smell it, and then we just want to get rid of it. So that the next person that's coming into the house won't smell it, won't see it, won't come across it. and they'll just see a fridge that has all kinds of great things to eat. It's a taboo conversation, it's a taboo discussion, it's a painful conversation, painful discussion that stays with a person for years. I know of a victim who, suffered 30 years ago, a visiting uncle, one time. And she was very young. To this day, she continues to have, that fear of men in that way. To this day, she feels betrayed by her own family, by her own loved ones, betrayed by her friends, betrayed by people that she came out to, because it's exactly that. Well, it happened so many years ago. Like, what's the point of talking about it now? Why bring it out now? I hear you. Okay, that's but you were young, so really, you've had lots of time to kind of heal. What good would it do now? What good would it do talking about it now? Well, what good would it do the rest of the family if we were to? No, we don't want to, confront him. We don't want to do any of that. So let's just move on, type of thing. So every time somebody tries to pick that shroud off to try to bring light to this issue, we're very quick to bring another darker, bigger cloth to throw on top of it, and to just get rid of it. Just get rid of that. Just move along. We empower, we give power to the abusers when we do that. We give power and we encourage. Maybe strong words on my part, but I will be blunt and straightforward in my language, and that we encourage sexual abuse when we do that. I was at a local school here where a teacher was abusing children, and I happened to be on the parent advisory committee. We were going to pay, well, when I say we, I meant the school was going to pay for a lawyer to defend the teacher who had been accused by children, not one, not two, several, for abusing them. He had already been charged. He was going to court. And the community response was, let's get him a lawyer. So that, outraged me to no end, and I spoke out about it. I resigned from the committee. I didn't want to have any part of it, and I spoke out about it and continue to do that. This is our mindset. If the community is going to defend and put money into defending those that have been charged and are abusing our children, how would a child in a family ever come out? How would a child ever speak to that? It was in the news. It was mainstream news. It was just incredible. And this is not very long ago, maybe, a decade ago, not very long ago. So that's where we as a community also have to mature. When those kinds of things happen, we have to be quick. This is not a third world country. This is first world country. This is where we have rule of law. The police are not out headhunting or out, willy-nilly charging people. We have lots of rights. We have lots of safeguards here. Like 10, guilty people will walk before one innocent person goes to jail. That's our system. So I can tell you that when the law enforcement, when police put and charge somebody, the majority of the time, they are doing that because they have the support of Crown Counsel, who's reviewed the evidence and is confident that they're going to win the court case. That is only when somebody gets charged. There's a preponderance of evidence. There's a very high likelihood that that person's going to get convicted. Only then is a charge approved. So I've got to tell you that when a charge is approved, and we as a community then say, let's collect money to defend him, that sickens me to no end. Because what we're doing then is we're betraying our children. What we're doing then is we're calling them liars. Look what we're doing. We're going to defend him, kids, because we don't believe you. Isn't that what we're saying? Absolutely, that's what we're saying. And so when the rest of the community looks at that, when the rest of the society looks at it, when the rest of the Indo-Canadian community looks at that, and other children that are being abused in their homes look at that, what's the takeaway? The takeaway is they're not going to believe me. They're not going to believe me. They're going to defend him, just like they did over there. So that type of maturity is still coming. We're not there yet. So that whole and I mean it's absolutely wrong. Nobody has the right to ask anyone to forgive their perpetrator without first offering them some way of reconciling what's happened. Let's talk about forgiveness once justice has been dished out. Once we've corrected the wrongs. Let's talk about forgiveness once we have done everything in our power to support, to stand with, to hear, to listen, to advance their complaint and their concern and their issue. Because then we have capacity to forgive, because now you're secure in who you are, your fear's been taken away. You know that you're not going to be victimized again. You know that you are protected. You know that you've been heard. Until that happens, Lord, asking people to forgive people for what's happened and the violence that has occurred to them, I think we're re-victimizing that victim.
Yeah, well said. And I guess to add to standing with our children.
Nope.
Okay, is it take 6?
1 second.
Okay.
Alrighty, can slate it.
Take 6. What comes first? Take 6 first and then the clap? Or the
Yeah,
clap
that's all
and then
good.
Yeah. Usually it's like take 6, scene A, C, take 6, and then clap.
clap.
They
Okay.
hit the, they hit the,
Yeah, hit the clapper.
You can take it out of my pay. Alright.
So yeah, in regards to like standing with our children and our loved ones, something I've seen when I've spoken to a few people is, I was talking to someone and they're actually based in Calgary, and she had an incident with, I think she was like 14, old enough, right? And to really know, and it was her uncle, and she to this day says, I tried to tell the family, and the family, she's in her 30s, she has 3 kids, and she's like, I tried to tell my family, even at family functions, she's like, it pains me because they don't fully address it with him, and they keep their relationship and all that, and she's like, I go around the room, say, Skip, to everybody else, and I guess, talking to a few people, that seems to be a pattern. They're like, okay, well, it happened, but we're gonna keep our relationship because I have a relationship with his sister and the family and I guess everything else, and or maybe they feel like, I've also heard this, I'm feeling I'm keeping the families together if I straddle the line, if you will. And I guess if you could maybe share your thoughts on that, or as to like why you feel people in the community think that way.
Oh, it incenses. It's so painful hearing that. It's just so aggravating and incredibly. It's hard to put words to how much anger I feel when I hear that we will compromise the sanity and the innocence of our children and our loved ones to keep a family together. what exactly are we keeping together when what you're trying to keep together is rotten, is dirty, it's evil? So then, really, what are you holding on to? What exactly is it that's meaningful there? And again, all we do there is encourage. All we do there is, yeah. Sorry, if you want to do that again, that's perfectly fine, because we're going to keep doing what we're doing now, which is just ignoring it. And so, not that child not only has lost trust in their uncle, but has lost trust in their parents, has lost trust in their siblings, has lost trust in their extended family, has lost trust in all the people around them that keep saying, I love you. Keep saying that I care for you, that will protect you. I'm a father of 2 daughters, and I can tell you that if any member of my family ever in any way, shape, or form victimized my daughters, that's the day they stop being family to me. That is the job of a father. That is the job of a mother. That is absolutely your first duty as a parent, to protect your child. So if you can't do that, stop calling yourself a parent. Because now what you've done is aligned yourself with the abuser. So I am not going to apologize for being that harsh, and I'm not going to apologize for being that clear, and I'm not going to apologize for being that direct, because it is that clear and it is that direct. Because when someone offends their relationship, when someone takes advantage of their position as an uncle, as an elder, and abuses a child in that home for sexual gratification, to advance their own weakness, their own evil, sort of behavior, that ends that. An uncle is supposed to protect, to support, to give love, to hold dear, not offend, not sexually abuse, not take advantage of, and not in any way, shape, or form hurt or harm or injure that child. So would we do the same thing if that same uncle came home one day and grabbed our child and then pulled out her finger and took a knife and chopped her finger off? Would we say, that's okay, you still have 9 fingers, it's all good, let's just move on, right? Would we say that's okay? Would we say that's okay if that same uncle stole money from us, came in and took jewelry out of our cupboards? Would we just say, that's okay, we're not going to call the police? I guarantee you'd be calling the police in a half a second. Say, our brother was just here and he stole our money. Would we just put it under would we just shove it under the carpet or under the rug, or put it aside if we're in a business deal with a family member and the family member cheats us? No. In a heartbeat, we'd be calling them out. We'd be calling everybody. In a heartbeat. Real estate deals go sour every day. And in a heartbeat, brothers turn on brothers. Sisters turn on sisters. Family turns on family. On what? Money. But when it comes to our children, when it comes to our daughters, no, let's just forget that. No, it's okay, that's fine. We're not going to talk about it anymore. Let's just forgive him. It's okay. It's just a one-time thing. So why complain about all these other things and not about the one thing that does make sense, where someone has actually offended the very thing that you are holding dear to yourself, family. They have offended the very meaning of family. And isn't it incredible that the words out of our mouth is that I want to keep the family together?
I think that's a great place to stop. We're at 1%.
Nice. Want to cut the clip?
Immaculate.
That was really very well
really,
said.
Thank you.
And there was like a drama to it that you added.
Yeah.
Would we do this? Would we do the
rhythm?
yeah.
With the rhythm, there was. I told you, natural.
Yeah.
So I'm like, trust me.
One.
It's already recording.
Oh, okay. Just re-roll it. Just that way we don't have to sync the middle section there that we just had.
Okay.
So re-roll.
Okay,
And his eyes are red, right?
Yeah. it's a little
Perfect.
bit.
That means they're in focus.
Yeah.
They're not actually red. You're okay.
It's like, wait a second.
So what do we take 8 now? Or take 9?
I think we're.
I actually
we're
can't remember.
7.
Take 7?
Even if we skip 6, it's fine. It doesn't
It's
matter.
cool.
As long as
Okay.
it's not a repeat, it's fine.
So what are we calling it?
Let's
now?
call it 8 to be safe.
To be safe, give it a buffer.
Yeah.
Give it a buffer.
Take
Okay.
8.
Take 8.
Perfect.
I like that. Where like we can skip one. Yeah, I think where we ended last time was great. Yeah, because I hear a lot of, we're taking the spiritual route, and and then I look at these people. I'm like, well, you can't pick and choose when you would like to be spiritual, and so yeah, that's in itself.
Wow. I'd love to hear more about that spiritual root, because I don't know where that comes from. There is no such thing as a spiritual root when it comes to being derelict in your duty as a father and as a mother. How is that spiritual? The first part of our sort of whole being is serving. So how are you serving your child? By denying them justice, by denying them closure, by denying them support, by denying them the confidence that they're speaking the truth, by denying them a place to have a voice, by denying them, the ability to get over that pain and to heal, by saying, just forget about it, because this is spiritual. I don't know any. I think I'm spiritual. I don't know if I'm very spiritual, but I think I have a good practice. I've never come across that. There's no such thing as turning a blind eye to offenses and victimization. The entire practice of Kirpan and the teachings of Guru Gobind Singh is about defending. Guru Gobind Singh's army would defend against looters, rapists, those that would come and victimize others. That is our legacy. That's where we come from. This place where we protected others. So today we're saying that we're just going to ignore those that are offending in our own homes because they're family. So that's not spiritual. That's actually going against everything that we've been taught and everything that we stand for. The whole idea behind Kirpan is about Kirpa. It's about defending those that cannot defend themselves, standing for them. So how is that? It's completely contrary, completely the opposite of everything that we stand for. So no, it's not spiritual.
Yeah, and I think it can also serve to be quite confusing, especially when you're speaking to someone who is younger and hasn't formed or solidified their own thoughts and opinions or their own individual values as a person. Because when you hear that, I think you start to question everything, because you're like, wait a second, if there's a right and wrong, isn't this a wrong? And why are you, you're going out of your way to keep relationships or whatever? And I find it can be confusing for some.
100%. We're, that's the worst kind of hypocrisy ever. When we tell a child that's been abused that it's okay, that we just need to forgive and move on. We leave that child in this very conflicted place. One, not knowing, when they can expect support and help and assistance from their parents. When something this egregious occurs with them, happens to them, where they're so, plainly victimized and so, violently victimized. And violence doesn't have to come from pain. Violence has to come from the break of trust, the break of confidence. That's violent. going from someone that you completely trust and have put everything, all of your being into them, and for the next day and that evening or that night, having that same person come into your room and violently, abuse you, is absolutely that's the part that tears somebody inside out. And so then to just hear from your parents that was to minimize it, to make it feel small, to make it just to be pushed under the rug, or from other family members, absolutely forget confusion. We mentally scar our child. We leave them in this psychologically wrecked place, who are going to continue through their life not knowing when they can count on people that they love, people that had stood and had said to them that they will protect them, people that they expect protection from, right? They may not have been able to stop the abuse, but they certainly have the capacity to support them after, in lending their voice to theirs, in outing and speaking out, and ultimately reporting what had happened. So yes, confusion is probably a very mild way of saying, probably the most mildest part of what that child is going to go through for the rest of their lives.
Fair enough. Yeah, and to add to that, and I've heard myself when people say, well, it's family, you can't call the police.
Yeah.
Or, you can't do that.
How many minutes on the card?
It says 5 minutes there.
Okay.
Okay?
We'll go for 5 more minutes.
So when it's quite interesting speaking with you, because you have a very hard and fast line, and that's also your nature, is to take action. Whereas when I've heard in the past, either people being told or even people around me, it's like it's I can't call the cops, like it's family, it's different.
No. You're right. I'm very black and white. But that's clarity. I don't think that's not that's being hard and fast. That's just clarity. That's clarity of mind. That's that's the teachings of our gurus. That's the teachings of our faith. To have that level of clarity. When somebody lies, they're a liar. What's there to discuss there? So when somebody cheats you, they're a cheater. When somebody steals from you, they're a thief. What's there to discuss? So, and until we speak about it openly and honestly and call it for what it is, then we just keep pretending, and the problem doesn't go away. The problem manifests itself in other ways. So we don't get to complain later. We don't get to say later that maybe we should have done this, maybe we should have done that. Well, I think we have to be very clear on what our roles and responsibilities are. As parents, as guardians, as people that have been charged with the security and the well-being of our children. There is no greater sort of offense that I think we can impart on a child in sexual abuse. And maybe my words now are going to be very controversial, but I would suggest that when a child is killed, they're killed once. When a child is abused, they continue to be abused throughout their life, and they have to live with that. And so the pain is constant. The pain continues. So I don't, and we've seen children commit suicide because the pain is unbearable, and it ties back to some, potentially, the depression and stress and all of those pieces that have come, the psychological issues and challenges, the mental health issues that come out of not having these pieces resolved and not, giving a voice to the pain and suffering that they're going through. So, yes, I'm very clear about that. This is not us saying, this is not one of those situations where, somebody comes to your home and instead of eating 2 rotis, they eat 3 rotis, whatever. That's just, we don't care about that stuff. This is the worst kind of betrayal of trust that we can have in a family. So not being clear about that is a problem.
Okay, we're at 2 minutes. Should we
Cool.
you want to change
If we have 2 minutes, let's try to set up. There's a lot of good stuff in there. If we could do like, kind of like how you answer, but in like one, like a big kind of like a statement or a sentence, just so that when we're editing it, we'll be able to kind of get it in there without having that time space to get the whole argument in there, but just as like one statement that we can use concisely.
Should we slate it for 9? It's 1 minute now.
Yes.
Is enough time? We should to be safe.
Let me just, you can cut that one. I'll just get it on this separately. All right.
Check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Check.
Because this one's also at 6
Yeah.
minutes, so I'll switch both.
Check.
Okay.
We
I just
know
want to
what
make
you
sure
have
it
for
doesn't get
breakfast.
cut off.
Yeah.
when we're little.
It could be
Not
something.
a whole-
It could be on any topic or any
Not a whole
part
lot.
that we touched
Small
on today.
bowl of,
There was one I remember you
cornflakes
mentioned
and
that you were elaborating on. It was
with
it's not that we
grapes.
have an epidemic, but if we have one, that's too many. Something like that, where it's just like a nice, quick beginning, middle, end of that statement,
Yeah.
like a sentence. I think that something like that would be perfect just to
We
have.
can move the
Then we can
clock.
switch
if that-
cards.
that's-
And I guess
House analogy.
no, it's good. The way it's gonna get zoomed in, and we don't have to move
So
anything.
camera's rolling, and you'll be looking at money though.
Yeah, that's good.
So I certainly want to make sure that we understand that.
It's like the Beauty and the Beast clock.
Yeah, it is.
Actually, yeah.
So the candle. Wait.
And the the candles, they had candles, right?
Candles are candles, yeah.
They would like
Yeah, exactly.
sing the song.
Yeah, that's
Person
right.
suffering
Yeah.
sexual abuse is one person too many. So there's work to be done, and this is where I believe that we leaders,
That should be fine. It's locked.
folks that have stepped forward, community leaders, have a role to play. Make safe places, make safe spaces where we can have this conversation, so that we can create some support
it catches
and
every little
understanding
sound.
and awareness to allow for people to give them voice, to know that they can break and breach their circle of family and friends that potentially are not supporting them, to step outside of that circle, to come into the community, to come to leaders, to come to others and share their pain and speak out, so that the community, the leaders, others can go to the family and say, what are you doing? Your child is in pain. Your child has been hurt. Your child has been victimized. Wake up. What are you doing? You don't need to do this. This is not
I did.
acceptable.
And it was interesting how this came about.
Let's help you
That's
move
Yes.
forward.
interesting.
Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
Get some
kind of
help
comes
for you
around,
and
and
your
Yeah.
child.
there certainly is
Wherever it is that
like this community
is.
of like young
Yeah.
artists we have.
Either
And
bring
Toronto,
them
I
to
guess
justice,
they
or make sure
it
they
shows
absolutely
more there. Like
Yeah.
over here,
Yeah,
where like we
yeah.
know a lot of people
This is
who have done
unacceptable.
well, and
This
like
is not gonna be
there's so
tolerated.
many
Put some
successful
measures in place.
artists in
Yeah.
in our community here.
Right.
Young people that I was
So,
like, oh, this is awesome. It's a whole
yeah.
new world.
Yeah,
On that
no, no.
perspective, I think
So important, and
it's critical that
and Rusnak came along and said, I want to be a chef.
Yeah.
Hang on a second. Accountant,
Doctor.
where is
It's not on the list.
No list.
Yeah.
Oh my god. So yeah, it was a complete shift. So when I say to folks, hey, my older daughter is a musician, my younger daughter is a chef. I'm like, oh, yeah, well, ठीक है, भी ठीक है.
Yeah. Now
Yeah.
they do that.
Yeah.
I had the same problem with my own parents for
Yeah,
a while.
yeah.
Until I showed them what I showed you.
Yeah.
Just now. and
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
like,
Very good. Very good.
they're like,
ठीक है फिर.
ठीक है फिर.
कर लो फिर तू.
कर लो फिर. Yeah, पता लग गया.
Yeah, लग गया पता. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's good. It's good to push the boundaries.
Important.
Alright, so this one's rolling. You can hit C1 on that one.
It's already recording.
Oh, okay, just re-roll it.
Okay.
Just, that way we don't have to sync the middle.